Good morning, everyone. I hope you all guys are safe at home and practicing social distancing. Yeah. Okay. So my name is Dr. Kunal Chaudhary. I am working as an assistant professor in Department of Orthopedics. Today I am going to take a lecture of management of open fracture. Okay. So as you all know, there are so many classifications to classify the fracture, but the most common of them are open fracture and the closed fracture. Okay. What's the difference between open and closed? In a closed fracture, the breach of the skin is intact. Okay, around the fracture. So that is called as a closed fracture. While in open fracture, the breach of the skin of the soft tissue envelope, which is not intact. So in definition, we can say these are the fractures in which there is a breach in the soft tissue envelope over or near the fracture, such a way that the fracture hematoma communicates with the external environment. Okay, got it? What is the mechanism of injury? It is mostly a high velocity injury. It is not always a true, but you can say in 95% there is high velocity injury, because low velocity injury there is mostly a closed one fracture. Okay, so open fractures occur as a result of direct high energy trauma, either from a road traffic collision or falls from a height. These fractures can also occur indirectly, such as high energy twisting type of injury. Okay, while running, the athletes might running fast, and the twisting injury that can produce sometimes open kind of an injury. Okay, epidemiology. The diaphyseal fractures are more common than the metaphyseal fractures. Okay, the diaphyseal means the shaft of the tibia, shaft of the femur, shaft of the radius ulna, shaft of the humerus. These are called the diaphyseal fractures rather than metaphyseal fracture. Highest rate of diaphyseal fractures are seen in tibia, 21.6%. That followed by the femur, that is 12.1%, radius and the ulna, and lastly the humerus. So the epidemiology says that the lower limb trauma are more open fractures as compared to the upper limb. Okay. The components of an open fracture. What are the components of open fracture? These are that include the fracture types, the soft tissue envelope which around the fracture, the neurovascular compromise, any neurovascular injury that should be assessed, like a vessel cut, like the distal neurovascular, like a distal neuro deficit, that has to be seen. And another thing is a contamination. Contamination is much more important. Why? Because contamination, if there is severe contamination, there is high chances of infection. Whenever we are dealing with open fractures, we are always suspicious, and we took extra care of the infection, because the bone infection is a severe injury, and it is very difficult to treat. It is not like impossible, but it's very difficult, and it's a long duration it takes, and the patient's time management is more. Okay. So this is the clinical presentation. Patient came with you with a pain, with the swelling, with the bleeding, with the deformity. Here this is a lady having a railway collision injury. Okay. So in railway collision there is high velocity injury. You can see that the thigh, skin over the thigh is over avulsed, skin over the leg is avulsed, and deformity is also present in a thigh region. And the bleeding is two types. Bleeding is continuous, and one is a hematoma. In continuous bleeding, you have to urgently look for any vessel cut, and you have to tie it. Otherwise, the patient can go into the hypovolemic shock. Classification of open fracture. There are so many classifications to classify the open fracture, but most of them all, the Gustello and Anderson classification is widely used. It is worldwide used. It is more commonly and used for classify the open fracture. So what is contained? It contains the size of the wound, the amount of soft tissue injury, the presence or absence of neurovascular injury, and the degree of a comminution of the fracture. Okay. So this is the Gustello-Anderson classification. There are three types: type 1, type 2, and a type 3. What are the description of type 1? Okay, we go by the each individual. In a type 1, there is a skin wound is less than 1 centimeter. As you all know that the open fracture is that there is a skin wound. Okay, now we have to measure the skin wound. If skin wound is less than 1 centimeter, we can say it's a type 1 type of Gustilo-Anderson fracture. And the wound is a clean. There is no any contamination. And also the fracture pattern is simpler. Okay, simple fracture means there is a two-part fracture. It's you can say the transverse fracture. Okay, what is the difference of complex fracture? In complex fracture, there is more comminution is there. The segmental is there. Okay, so in simple fracture, it's only a two-part fracture. Most commonly, it is a type of a transverse fracture. Okay, so in type 1, skin wound is less than 1 centimeter. Wound is a clean and the fracture pattern is simple. Okay, that's a type 1. And next is a type 2. In type 2, the skin wound is more than 1 centimeter. Okay, in type 1 it is less than 1 centimeter, while in type 2 it is more than 1 centimeter. And soft tissue damage, it's not extensive. As you can clearly see in this picture, there is a soft tissue extension is more. So it is not considered in type 2. Okay. The soft tissue damage is not extensive and no flaps or avulsion. You have seen the picture, there is flaps, avulsion. So that picture is from type 3. And the fracture pattern is also simpler. Okay. In type 1 and type 2 both, the fracture pattern is simpler. You can say two-part fracture. Okay. So now come to the type 3, which is a more severe injury. It is most commonly due to the high velocity injury. Type 1, type 2 can occur due to low velocity injury, but type 3 always form from the high velocity injury. High velocity is like a road traffic accident, railway collision, the industrial injuries. That all causes the type 3. Okay. And there is extensive soft tissue damage. Okay. So this classification, as you can say, they are more focusing on a soft tissue, okay, rather than a fracture type. Okay, the soft tissue is much more important because we are going to treat whole the limb, not only a bone. Okay, the soft tissue is also important because if soft tissue damage is there, so there is more chances of delayed union, non-union, and osteomyelitis. So we have to look for the soft tissue injury also. Okay, so in type 3, the extensive soft tissue damage, the fracture pattern is multifragmentary. Segmental fracture. Segmental fracture is like not a 2-part but a 3-part or a 4-part. Okay. There can be a bone loss. Okay. If there is a bone loss, irrespective of the size of the wound, it will be considered as a type 3. Or a severe crush injury or a vascular injury that require repair. Okay. The wound is you can say 1 to 5 centimeter. But if there is a vascular injury that requires repair, that can be considered as type 3. Okay. Or a severe contamination including farmyard injuries. Okay. The farmyard injuries, the industrial injuries, they always have the contaminated wound that require extensive debridement and antibiotics. So they all are considered in a type 3. So in type 3 they have subtypes also. Okay. What are the subtypes? 3A, 3B, 3C. Okay. What is in a 3A? In 3A, the adequate soft tissue cover of bone despite extensive soft tissue damage. What does that mean? That the skin can be covered. Okay. Despite of the skin avulsion, we can close the skin primarily. Okay. That is called the type 3A. While in type 3B, the soft tissue injury is that extensive that we cannot cover the primarily. We might require the flaps or a skin graft to cover the wound. So that will be considered as a type 3B. Okay. And the major wound contamination. While in type 3C, the arterial injury that requires repair will go into the type 3C. Okay. 3A, 3B, 3C. 3A, there is extensive soft tissue damage in 3A, 3B. But what is the difference in 3A? That we can cover the wound primarily with the skin flaps. We don't require extra flaps or a STG. If we require extra flaps or STG, that it can go into the type 3B or in type 3C. There is vascular injury that requires repair. Okay. These are the clinical picture of a type 1, the Gustilo-Anderson. You can see there is a wound that is less than 1 centimeter. There is only a puncture wound is there. Okay. And the fracture, there is no any contamination, and you can see the fracture pattern is on two type fracture. That is a simple fracture. The transverse fracture is there. There is no soft tissue damage, and it's a low energy trauma. So it is a type 1 Gustilo-Anderson fracture. Okay, the skin wound is less than 1 centimeter. Now go for the type 2. In type 2, you know that skin wound is more than 1 centimeter. As you can see here, there is no skin flap. The soft tissue damage is moderate, crushing is there, but not extensive soft tissue damage. Okay, the moderate crushing is present. The fracture is moderate comminution. You can see it's a simpler fracture, and the low energy. It is not a high velocity. So type 1, type 2. Now this is type 3A. As I have told you, difference between type 3 and 3B. There is a soft tissue damage, but the coverage is possible primarily without any help of a flaps or a skin graft. Okay, you can see there is a large wound. Wound is more than 10 centimeter, and the fracture is a comminution. Comminution is there, so it's a high velocity injury. Extensive soft tissue damage, contamination is there, but we can cover the bone primarily. So it is considered as a type 3A. This is type 3B. The wound is large. The fracture bone cannot be covered by soft tissue because there is massive contamination. There is no skin actually, so we cannot cover that part. So for that, we need a skin graft or a flap. So it is considered as a type 3B. The fracture is severely comminuted, and there is a high velocity trauma. The contamination is also there. So we must go for the debridement also, and proper antibiotic and proper care should be taken. Otherwise, there will be chances of infection, and the infection ultimately leads to the osteomyelitis, which is very devastating for the patient as well as the doctor. So in a very high velocity injury, you must consider the soft tissue injury, and you have to look for the bone as well as the soft tissue. So that is the main issue to classify the fracture. Whenever it is type 1 and type 2, you can easily fix the fracture, and you can say it's a good. But in type 3, A, B and C, you always go for extra care. Okay. Otherwise, it may end up in a delayed union, non-union, or infection. It's a type 3C. There is a fracture over tibia, and this is a wound over the posterolateral aspect of the tibia. You can say there is a popliteal artery which is cut, so it requires repair. So vascular injury requires repair, so it will be considered as a type 3C. Now, management of open fractures. The treatment of high velocity open injuries aim to preserve life, limb and the function. Okay, we have to see the patient as a whole. We are not treating only the limb. We have to see the patient as a whole. So the first goal should be to preserve life. Okay, then the limb, then the function. The goals of the treatment, the intermediate objectives are, as I told you before, the prevention of infection, then the fracture stabilization, then the soft tissue coverage. We have to go by steps. Okay, infection prevention is almost importance. Okay, so this is the algorithm regarding the fracture management of an open fracture. So first, we go for the initial assessment. Okay, ABC, as you all guys know, according to the ATLS, Advanced Trauma Life Support, we look for the airway, breathing, circulation. Okay, and emergency room management like debridement, like oxygen requirement, fluid requirement, catheterization, whatever should be done in the emergency room. Then the wound dressing and fracture splitting. If there is a wound that has to be given a through saline wash, we give a through saline wash. We put a dressing over there, and if it requires splintage, we give it a plaster. Okay. Now the primary operation, stage wound debridement. Okay, the goal is prevention of infection. That is done by the stage wound debridement. Okay, first we have to debride the wound. We don't fix the fracture first. Okay, we always debride the wound if there is severely contaminated wound. Okay, debridement of wound is almost importance. Okay, then only we go for the fracture stabilization. First is a wound debridement. If it's done, then we go for the fracture stabilization. Now, after primary, we go for the secondary operation. In secondary operation, what is that? If it requires, as I told you before, any flap or STG required for the coverage of the wound. Coverage of the wound is important. If you don't cover the wound, that will lead to infection. Okay? So we have, that's sometimes there is so much contamination, so we don't cover it primarily. Okay, so we wait for we just give a debridement, we put a wound open, we give a continuous, we give a daily dressing, antibiotics. Then after 3 to 4 days, when the wound is likely to be clean, then there is no sign of infection, then we can go for the secondary coverage in the form of the flap or STG or anything. Then bone reconstruction. Okay, sometimes we fix the bone primarily with the X-fix. Okay, after then 1 to 2 weeks, we are aware that there is no any active infection. Then we can go for the bone plating or nailing. Okay, and after that the rehabilitation. Rehabilitation of the open fracture is almost important. So, what is the initial assessment? Important components in assessing traumatized extremity are: first of all, you have to take proper history, and you should know the mechanism of injury. Okay, so whenever you ask the patient that what is the mechanism of injury, and it is said that road traffic, high and railway injury or industrial injury, then you can presume that it is a highly contaminated wound. Okay. Next is a neurovascular status, which is most important. Okay, you must check for the distal pulse. Okay, that should be given priority. If there is a distal pulse is not present, so that comes into priority. Okay, the size of the skin wound, muscle crush, periosteal stripping or a bone loss, fracture pattern, and there fragmentation, contamination, compartment syndrome is there or not. Okay, if compartment syndrome is there, we have to go for the fasciotomy. I haven't mentioned, but whenever the open fracture came, you have to issue the MLC. Okay, the medico-legal case, it is almost importance. Okay, every time there is a open fracture, whenever you are doing practice outside or in the government hospital, whenever there is came, you must go for the policing form. Okay, that is the part of the management also. So never forget to do MLC. Okay. What are the investigation we go for the open fracture? Like we go for the routine blood investigation like CBC, RBS RFT, HIV HBS AG. Okay, almost in every patient we go for the HIV HBS because there are more cases of HIV HBS AG and so contamination from that patients to the doctor is high. So for our safety, we must go for the HIV HBS AG and the X-ray of the local part. Okay, whenever there is a sharp tibia fracture, X-ray, there is a rule. You have to include one joint above and below the fracture. Otherwise, you may miss the other fractures. Okay, so you don't go for the shaft only. Whenever there is a fracture, you always look. If there is a tibia fracture, you always look for the knee joint and the ankle joint. Okay, always and always. Otherwise, you might miss the another fracture. So whenever you are prescribing an X-ray, you must remember this point: fracture, one joint above and below. Okay. The third one is a USG. Sometimes there is any abdominal injury we have to rule out. You go for the USG. CT scan and MRI. There is a head injury, or when you there is an intra-articular injury, we go for the CT scan and MRI also. Color Doppler. If there is a vascular supply is poor, doubtful, then you can go for the color Doppler. Okay. So what comes first? The wound debridement. As I told you before, it is to prevent infection. So first we go for the irrigation. The supplements systemic debridement by removing foreign material and decreasing bacterial load. Irrigation we do in a casualty. Okay, whenever the patient came with open fracture, we irrigate the wound by 2 to 3 ml, 2 to 3 liter of normal NS. Okay. There are also the system available there. It's called as pulse lavage, but there is not in our casualty. But in some instrument, in some places they are available. The pulse lavage. It's a irrigation system is there. That pressure must be less than 50 psi units. Otherwise, it will cause the soft tissue injury also. We use the normal saline normally for irrigation. The antibiotic solution has no advantage than a soap for irrigation. The surfactant, that is non-sterile soap, same effectiveness, less tissue damage, and a more economical. The debridement and irrigation. Gustillo described this in 1984. The adequate debridement. Adequate debridement is the single most important factor in the attainment of a good result in the treatment of an open fracture. Okay. Systemic debridement. It removal of a gross contamination and debris from superficial to deep fracture. All necrotic tissue should be excised. Whenever there is a necrotic tissue in the wound, whether it is a muscle or bone, whatever it is, it has to be excised. If you leave it there, there is more chances of infection because the bacteria growth over that necrotic tissue. Okay, the bacterial load will increase if the necrotic tissue will remain there. So whatever is necrotic tissue, whatever the foreign body is there, it has to be came out. Use of tourniquet should be minimized. Wound extension for full evaluation of a soft tissue injury. The muscle viability has to be determined intra-op. Okay, you have to check the muscle is viable or not. If it is viable, we can preserve it. But if it is not viable, then we have to remove that muscle. Otherwise, it can lead to necrosis and the further infection. So, how will we check the muscle is viable or not? We look for the contractility, the color, the consistency. Color is a red flashy color. If it is, that's good. The consistency of the muscle, the capacity to bleed. If it is active, if it is viable, then if you put a cut or a small cut, there is a bleeding. So whenever the active bleeding is there, that is normal. If his bleeding is not there, then we can say the necrotic. So it has to be removed. Okay. The evaluation of the bone, the periosteum, and any completely free cortical fragments. That is some cortical fragments which are severely contaminated and free of all the structure, like no periosteum, no any muscle coverage. So we can remove that. Okay. When it is difficult to fully determine the viability of all tissue at the time of initial debridement, we can go for the next debridement after 2 to 3 days. Okay. The debridement of the wound, you can say there is a wound over the tibia which is debrided and primarily closed. The timing of debridement and irrigation. Most guidelines recommend debridement within 6 hours. If clean primary closure, serial debridement may be necessary every 24 to 48 hours until the wound viability is ensured. If clean, within 2 to 3 days, delayed primary closure is done. Later, secondary closure or healing by secondary intention. Antibiotics. Antibiotics and infection. 24 to 70% of open fractures are contaminated with bacteria. Is wound culture pre-debridement and post-debridement useful? The answer is no. The systemic administration. In type 1, we use the first or second generation cephalosporin in type 1 and 2. When in type 3A to C, we use 5 days amoxicillin clavulanic acid or ampicillin sulbactam or 5 days third generation cephalosporin. While in potential fecal contamination, that is a farmyard injury or open pelvic fracture, we give the piperacillin sulbactam, tazobactam or a carbapenem or a third generation cephalosporin plus metronidazole. Okay. The antibiotics. We can use the local antibiotic also. In Gustillo type 3 fracture, additional use of local aminoglycoside impregnated polymethylene methyl acrylate. That is a cement, and we mix the antibiotic in that and we make a cement bits like this. This is antibiotic impregnated cements. Okay, so we can put it in the wound also. That is a local antibiotic. Okay. Now the stabilization of the fracture. The wound debridement is over. Now we can go for the stabilization of the fracture. Okay. There are 3 types. The non-operative. One is a non-operative. In non-operative, we can go for a splintage, POP slab for a temporary fixation. The goal is to pain relief and facility of nursing care. The primary surgery. Timing. It's a surgical emergency. Operating within a 6 to 8 hour injury. Contaminated wounds not treated within this time will have sustained bacterial multiplication to result in a early infection. What is the primary surgery? Okay, the fracture stabilization. As soon as primary wound care is completed, treatment should proceed to fracture reduction and a fixation. Surgeons should re-scrub and re-gown. Okay, all the instruments should be discarded. Another new fresh trolley, new fresh instrument, and the surgeon should also re-scrub with a new gown. Okay, after the debridement for a fracture stabilization. It is like a second OT. Okay. So different set of instrument than those used for a debridement. It is necessary to prevent the infection. For a fixation, we have two options. One is external fixation, and second one is internal fixation. Okay. The indication for external fixation in open fractures are severe contamination at any site. There is severe contamination, so we have no option other than the external fixation. Okay, and sometimes periarticular fractures, we can go for the external fixation, like the distal radius, elbow dislocation. We can use this is definitive management. Relative, like we can sometimes go for the external fixation in around the knee, ankle, elbow, wrist, or pelvis. What is the advantages of external fixation? It can be applied relatively easy and quickly. It provides relative stable fracture fixation. There is no further damage done if applied correctly. It avoids implantation of hardware in an open wound. Okay. Fourth line is there is no further damage. Okay. There is already a soft tissue damage is there. And if you go for the plating, so we damage the further periosteal stripping, the further muscle, further bleeding. So it is not advocated. So we go for the external fixation. In external fixation, there is no further damage done. Okay, if applied correctly. The disadvantage, the major problems with external fixation are related to the pin track infection, the malalignment, the delayed union, the poor patient compliance. The patient compliance is almost important. Okay, sometimes the patient does not like it because it is almost for there to 4 to 5 months to carry these things. That is really scary. So the tubular fixator may not be the choice of fixation, but ring fixator like a Ilizarov, okay, in open diaphyseal fracture. Ilizarov is gold standard for treating the open 3AB fracture. Okay, always remember that Ilizarov fracture. Now the indication for internal fixation. The fixation in open fractures. There is a periarticular fracture. We have to fix it. Okay, whenever there is an intra-articular fracture, we mostly go for the internal fixation, like a distal or proximal tibia, the distal or proximal femur, the humerus, the proximal ulnar radius, the selected distal radius ulna, the acetabulum or pelvis injury, or the diaphyseal fracture, there is like a femur, tibia, humerus, or a radius ulna. What are the options we have for an internal fixation? The plates. Okay, the open diaphyseal fracture of the radius and ulna, as well as the humerus, are best managed with the plate fixation. The plate fixation of lower extremity diaphyseal fracture is generally not recommended. We mostly use the nails in the lower limb diaphyseal fracture. Okay, while in upper limb we use the plates like this. You can see there is a diaphyseal fracture of radius ulna which is treated with the plating. The intramedullary nailing. The lock intramedullary nailing has been established as a treatment of choice for most diaphyseal fracture of lower limb. Okay, the technique has particular value for open fracture, as intramedullary nail can also be inserted with no further disruption of the already injured soft tissue. Okay, as I told you before, the external fixation, there is no any damage. In intramedullary nailing, there is also less damage. Okay, you can say that there is no damage. There is damage, but as compared to plating, there is less damage. Okay, so it preserves the remaining extra osseous blood supply to the cortical bone. Okay, so you can see there is a type 3A segmental fracture. Okay, there is segmental fracture, so it will be included in a type 3A. So it is treated with the wound debridement and the nailing. Early wound cover surgery. Primary closure. If it is to be done, the following criteria must be done. Okay, there is two types of closure: primary and secondary. If primary has to be done, the following criteria should be met. One is the original wound must have been fairly clean. Okay, and no any higher contamination should be there. All necrotic tissue and foreign material have been debrided. Circulation of the limb is essentially normal, and the nerve supply to the limb has to be intact. The patient's general condition has to be satisfactory. The wound can be closed without tension. If there is tension, we leave it open. Okay, whenever you are closing the wound, if there is a tension, so high chances of necrosis is there. So we leave it open and we go for the secondary closure. Okay, the closure will not create a dead space. The patient does not have a multi-system injury. VAC, that is a vacuum assisted closure. It is one kind of a technique used to treat the major big wound. Okay, the wound bed is exposed. In this, the wound bed is exposed to mechanically induce negative pressure in a closed system. It is like a closed negative system. It's a continuous suction irrigation. Okay. What helps? It helps to remove fluid from extravascular space, that reduces edema, improves microcirculation, and enhances the proliferation of preparative granulation tissue. That the polyurethane formed dressing is placed in wound and ensure an even distribution of negative pressure over the wound. It is like that. Okay, this is the open wound, and the vacuum assisted closure is applied. When we go for the amputation, okay, sometimes in open fracture we can go for the amputation primarily. That has to be decided by some score that we look next slide. When we can consider the amputation in a severely crushed, the non-salvageable injury, amputation is definitive management. Like examples are railway injury, the industrial injury, the contamination is severe, there is a vascular injury, the bone fracture is severe. So we don't go into the debridement and the fixation because we know the result. The results will not be that satisfactory. So we go in that fracture for a primary amputation as a definitive management. Okay, which is done by the MESS, Mangal Extremity Severity Score, or either by the Ganga Hospital Open Injury Severity Score. What is the Mangal Extremity Severity Score? It is given by the Johnson. Strong weightage was given for the presence of warm ischemia. Okay, this is the Mangal Extremity Severity Score. It includes the injury type, shock group, ischemic group, and age group. Okay, what is in the injury group? Whether it is a low energy, medium energy, high energy, or a massive crush. Okay, according to that, the score is given. Same in the shock, whether patient is a normal pressure, whether it is a hypotension, whether it is a prolonged hypotension. Okay, whether now the ischemia, whether it is a mild ischemia, whether moderate or advanced, and the age, if age is less than 30 or more than 30. According to that, the score is given and the score is counted. So at the end of it, whether it is 6 or less, the score is 6 or less, we can say the limb can be salvageable. But it is more than 7, amputation is generally the eventual stuff. So if it is more than 7, then we can think of the primary amputation. The same way is another is a Ganga Hospital Open Injury Severity Score. What it includes? It includes the skin over the wounds, the muscle and a nerve injury, as well as the another comorbid condition like injury debridement level interval, the comminution, the age, the diabetes, whether it is polytrauma or not. According to that, the scores are given, and we count the score. Okay. If the score is 14 and below, so we can say the limb can be salvageable. Okay, but 17 and above should be considered for a primary amputation. In between 15 to 16 must be assessed by an experienced team or a case-to-case basis. Okay, and what are the complications of open fractures? It can lead to hypovolemic shock. The compartment syndrome can be occur. The fat embolism can occur. The ARDS occur. The neurovascular injuries can occur, and the infection. Okay, so these are from my side. Thank you very much. Okay. Excuse me.